Hello, fellow students, faculty, and other audience members. Today, this How We Think forum will be focusing on the topic of mortality. And through the various panel members attending today, we can analyze how an interdisciplinary approach can help break down a topic and analyze from more angles the impacts, outcomes, and pitfalls of the chosen topic or object. This multifaceted discussion will incorporate an array of disciplines that will individually analyze our own chosen object through the lens of their respective disciplines. My name is Brady Williams, and I'm the moderator of this How We Think forum. I'm a freshman in the Honors College, majoring in cybersecurity with a minor in computer science. Now, I'm going to open up the floor to each of our panelists to introduce themselves and give a brief overview of their academic background.
My name is AJ. I am majoring in computer science as an undergraduate. I'm a freshman.
My name is Kristen Fisher. I'm a freshman in the Honors College studying finance and supply chain.
I'm Anthony Prabhu Hensley, a freshman in brain and behavioral sciences, so essentially neuroscience, specifically with a focus on abnormal psychology and autism.
In this forum, we're going to be covering the topic of Neuralink and how it relates to the question of mortality. Neuralink is a computer chip that is inserted into a drilled hole in the skull that connects to a small portion of the brain, which would theoretically allow its users to control computers using their thoughts. Put it on image right now. So this right here is just a brief picture of how it would be inserted. So a small hole would be drilled through the skull. The device would be implemented right on the layer of the skull touching the brain, and then the hole would be closed. So one question that I'm going to pose to you guys is, when prompted with the idea of directly controlling computers through our brains, what were your initial reactions, benefits, dangers, mostly positive, negative? What do you guys think?
So my initial reaction was mostly negative with some positive in that when talking about inserting a machine into someone's brain or into someone's body that can communicate to the outside, it can be quite concerning. However, if done correctly, I think it could also lead to very interesting results in that we are more capable of doing or connecting to machines and doing things through them. So just to talk a little bit about what Neuralink is. Neuralink is a brain-computer interface, or a BCI, and all that means is that it allows communication between the brain and a machine. What it does is it analyzes brainwaves and then tries to seek intention in those brainwaves, and then relays that information to a computer or a machine, and then the machine decodes that and tries to execute that intention. Historically, it's been mostly used on monkeys. They try to insert silver pieces into a monkey's head or around a monkey's head and connected it to a machine. And through a bunch of different experiments, they were able to get a monkey to control a robotic arm. So it has worked in the past with monkeys. But I do find it somewhat concerning in that is for cybersecurity wise. If someone were able to access these machines and they were able to create their own brainwaves and encode them and upload them to these machines with the correct intention and all that, the machine would then get that encoding and then execute it, whether or not the user of the machine wanted that to happen. So people who are able to actually access those machines, they'd be able to just upload whatever they wanted, upload a brainwave that could do some sort of damage to either the user or to someone else, regardless of whether or not the user actually wanted it to be done. Back to Neuralink. One of the main issues with Neuralink is that the research that's being done with it is all privately funded, so we're not getting a lot of information on how the testing is being done or what they're testing for or all the setup that's required for it, because in most cases there's a lot of training that's involved that a user needs to figure out how to actually communicate intention to the machine, and then the machine also needs to figure out how to decode the intention. But my main questions for this is essentially just, is the potential of what it can do and the possible ethical problems that it has, is that worth it?
Awesome. Thank you so much, AJ. So that's definitely a question that we're gonna come back to and cover later on in the forum. Thank you. Okay, so now we're gonna cover another topic. It's going to be the topic of neuroscience and that perspective on the Neuralink.
Most of the studies they're doing right now are either to examine the cybersecurity aspects that AJ was talking about, or to work on the efficiency of the integration with the biological framework. As we all know, your body does reject foreign objects, and this has been a continuing problem in medicine. But they have found in some experiments that they can use a medicine to inhibit glial scarring. What essentially this means is that the wound is not going to heal the same way a head injury normally would, so that your brain is less likely to reject the implant. So they're making progress there. I agree with AJ that this is a very big concern, but there are potential benefits. They already have vagus nerve implants where they literally implant a chip into your neck and it rests on your vagus nerve and is controlled by an outside device, and those have been approved for medical use. Those personally make me very uncomfortable, but I acknowledge that they have been an important advance in medicine, so I think Neuralink is going to go a similar route where it would be approved for like a very specific medical use at first. The good news in cybersecurity terms is that they ran some simulated cyber attacks on the visual cortices of mice. And this was only done with a very simple model because more complicated models are very expensive to run. But after running a couple of different cyber attacks on those mice, on those simulated mice brains, they found that although brains are susceptible to attacks of the sort, so either over flooding neurons or jamming them and preventing them from firing, that they do consistently return to normal functioning after the cyber attack has ended. Now, the study acknowledged that they do need to test more types of attacks, and that future studies would either try to do this with real mice or with more advanced models that already exist, but that were not in the budget of the study. So I believe Neuralink is very promising as at least a medical device, but there are a few words of caution to go with it, as AJ discussed. Just a question for you, Kristen. Based on your experience in marketing, how well do you think this could be marketed, and how would it fit into the current insurance models that people have for medical things? Would it be very accessible, or would it be just a small selection of people? How would they be able to access it? How expensive?
Thank you, and we'll come back to these questions after each person gives their answers to the posed question. So now I'm just going to pass it off to our last board member or our last panel member, Kristen.
Yeah, so coming with the business discipline and the way I perceived learning about what Neuralink's currently doing, definitely kind of like what AJ was saying, talking about they're talking about the monkeys, how they were using it, and that definitely made me kind of wonder the ethical standpoint of that, because when companies test on animals, that can create a whole PR nightmare, because there's lots of animal rights groups that are closely watching every move that the company makes. And so just recently, in February 2022, the Business Insider published talking about how the animal rights group, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, said it submitted a complaint to the U.S. Department of Agriculture about obtaining more than 700 pages of documents related to the monkeys used in Neuralink, which was researched at the University of California at Davis between 2017 and 2020. And they like respond to that obviously, but like some monkeys did die during like experiments, so like that creates like a PR nightmare like when that gets revealed. So like it kind of hurts the company before it even gets off the ground. So kind of definitely looking at the ethical standpoint and like how they're testing on animals and how to be in the best mindset so that doesn't create a huge nightmare for the company. And so it also makes me wonder though, on the other side of things, when I first heard it, I was wondering about the people over profit mentality. Like it's very, we see in the medical world, especially in like the medical industry, the healthcare industry, especially in America, where people are very often taken advantage of at the expense, like for the company's profit. And like we see with insulin prices skyrocketing and things like that. So at what point will this like the emphasis shift from like they're people over profit now, but when will it shift to profit over people and are they already there? Because obviously the company, if we're asked, they'd say that they're people for profit. No company's gonna admit that they're profit over people. But definitely just kind of concerned when like new people or new companies enter the medical field or the medical world, and how they're gonna go about that issue. And then my last kind of thought process when I was learning about Neuralink, which is the sustainability of it, like on the supply chain level. Like we know how much like software updates regularly. So like when there is software already implanted in someone, how are they updating that software and not letting it fall behind? Like how are they managing that within the supply chain? Because that can get very complex and tricky and very expensive. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kristen. So now that we have some posed questions to each of the different disciplines here, we can kind of cover one by one and easily go through them. So I believe Anthony or AJ, you posed to Anthony, are the potential benefits and ethical concerns of Neuralink worth the risk? So what are your thoughts, Anthony?
I tend to be very conservative in the field of new medical advances. I'm very much worried about all the possibilities, especially as a philosophy minor. It's partially my job to consider all the aspects of a question. But considering the success of things like vagus nerve implants, I think that as long as it's kept in a very small realm and is tested in a very specific area at first, then it can definitely be helpful. In a larger field, that remains to be seen.
Thank you. And then I know you've also posed a question to Kristen, so I'll just reiterate it. It was based on the experience of marketing, how would Neuralink be implemented into the market and also its effects on insurance?
Yeah, so definitely in like the BCG matrix, Neuralink would probably be considered a question mark, the potential of a star, basically just meaning that as a question mark, they have a low share of the market currently. But they have a high possibility for growth. Like they're very innovative and new research constantly coming out. So they have like all the possibilities ahead of them. And so I think they could be a star when like as they continue to have cutting edge research and moving themselves forward. And so in the terms of insurance though, we see how insurance it's a little finicky with like what you can get approved, what you can't get approved. So I think it would have to be a lot of like probably donor dollars to be able to get them on the side of insurance to get stuff approved. Otherwise, it's going to be very out of pocket and targeted to people who have that amount of money. So the Neuralink is going to basically essentially go to like the rich and powerful first.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And just the last posed question, it was, so how are they updating the software? I believe you posed that to either AJ or I guess. But how are they updating software and how can we ensure that as new updates for Neuralink come out, that software doesn't fall behind and that the supply chain doesn't fall behind in making deliverables on these updates?
Well, honestly, it's hard to say because already many companies, they already implement software that is not being updated. The reasons are as simple, it's expensive. It can take time, it costs money, but I mean, as all software when it gets updated, it's usually more secure and it's more helpful and it's more efficient.
Circling back to the topic of mortality, how can Neuralink be used to maybe advance kind of the lives of humans? Thank you guys for attending this How We Think forum. I hope you guys took something away from it, and thank you.